Okay, imagine this. You're cutting your way through the thick, heavy jungles of Cambodia. The air is sticky, it's the 16th century, and you're chasing these wild rumors of a lost city. A city made of stone that was just swallowed by the green. And then, all of a sudden, you break through the trees and there it is. A silent, sprawling city so impossibly grand it takes your breath away. Today we're digging into the incredible story of Angkor. We're going to try and solve the mystery of how one of the greatest cities on Earth just vanished, leaving behind this puzzle that stumped people for centuries.
When a Portuguese missionary named Antonio de Magdalena stumbled upon Angkor way back in 1586, that's exactly what he said. I mean, can you imagine? He found a city with gates so perfect he thought they had to have been carved from a single massive stone. But it was empty, a ghost city. The only things living there were a few monks and a whole lot of wild animals. So the big question was, what on earth happened here?
To really get the scale of this mystery, you first have to understand the sheer scale of Angkor itself. At its absolute peak in the 12th century, the capital of the Khmer Empire was huge. We're talking bigger than modern-day New York City. And get this, historians estimate that 1 out of every 1,000 people on the entire planet lived right here. That's 1 million souls, in a city that was about to become completely empty. Just mind-boggling.
So, how in the world did they support a population that massive? Well, the answer, and this is the secret to both their incredible rise and their spectacular fall, it all comes down to one thing: water. You see, Angkor wasn't just a city of stone. It was a revolutionary, city-sized water machine.
And the heart of this machine was something called a bere. Now, these weren't just ponds. We're talking colossal, human-made lakes. These things were absolute engineering marvels, designed to capture and hold the unbelievable power of the yearly monsoon. If you were to look at a map of Angkor from above, the whole landscape of canals and these beres, it looks like a giant, intricate computer circuit board. It's incredible.
This system itself was just pure genius. They'd capture the torrential monsoon rains, then store all that water in these massive berets. Then, during the long, hot, dry season, they'd precisely release it through this whole network of canals. And here's the crucial part. While pretty much every other civilization was at the mercy of the weather, the Khmer were harvesting rice 3, sometimes even 4 times a year. This massive food surplus, well, that was the engine that powered their entire empire.
And for centuries, that engine ran like a dream. But you know, the very success that built this incredible empire also, quietly, planted the seeds of its own destruction. By the 14th century, the pillars holding up the whole Khmer civilization were starting to crack from the inside, long before any final disaster hit.
You've got 3 major threats all bubbling up at once. First, to feed 1 million people, you have to clear a lot of jungle for rice paddies. This led to massive deforestation and soil erosion. Second, the whole spiritual foundation of the empire was starting to change. And third, that incredible water network, their greatest asset, was slowly becoming their greatest liability.
And this spiritual shift, it was absolutely critical. See, the empire was built on this idea of the Hindu god-king, a ruler who was basically divine, with the absolute power to command these huge armies of laborers for all those massive building projects. But then the people started converting to Theravada Buddhism. It was a much more humble, individualistic faith that kind of rejected all that lavish excess. So all of a sudden, the king's power to command the workforce needed to maintain the waterworks just started to fade away.
And this is the real core of their problem. The water network had grown so huge, so complex and interconnected that it needed constant, massive-scale maintenance to keep it going. But with the king's authority weakening, that maintenance just wasn't happening. It was this incredibly fragile, complex machine that you couldn't just shut down. And if one little part failed, it could trigger a catastrophic cascading failure across the entire system.
So, the empire was weak. It was vulnerable, basically teetering on the edge. It didn't need some huge invasion to push it over. No, the final blow, it didn't come from an army. It came from the sky itself. The climate, the very thing they had brilliantly engineered their entire civilization to control, turned on them with a vengeance.
Data from ancient tree rings in the area tells us this absolutely brutal story, a fatal 1-2-3 punch. First, a terrible multi-decade drought hits. The berets start drying up. So in a panic, their engineers radically change the system. They dig these new, straighter channels to rush every last drop of water they can find into the city. And then, the weather violently flips. The drought ends, and it's immediately followed by a series of incredibly intense, powerful monsoons.
And here is the absolute, tragic irony of the whole story.
The very changes they made to survive the drought, those channels they dug to quickly capture scarce water, they now became weapons. They funneled a torrent of floodwater, silt, and debris right into the heart of the network. It overwhelmed the dams, it smashed the canals, it completely destroyed the intricate system beyond any hope of repair. Their lifeline literally drowned.
And what's wild is that we can actually see the panic and the desperation of these last few years etched right into the city's stones. The archaeology tells this story of a people frantically trying to hold back a flood that they had, without realizing it, unleashed upon themselves.
This quote just perfectly captures that feeling of the end times. There's a bridge in Angkor called Spion Thma, and it looks nothing like the perfect, beautiful stonework from the empire's golden age. It's a jumbled, chaotic mess. And why? Because it was built with recycled stones that they literally ripped out of their own sacred temples. I mean, just imagine the level of desperation it would take to tear down the homes of your gods to build one last-ditch dam. A dam that, in the end, failed.
So, with the water system completely shattered, the hydraulic city became a hydraulic trap. The uncontrolled water created stagnant pools and swamps all over the city, and these, of course, became perfect breeding grounds for mosquitoes carrying malaria and for bacteria causing dysentery. The very place that was engineered for life had turned into a place of death. The people, they had no choice. They had to leave.
And the moment that the city's million people were gone, a new conqueror arrived. The jungle, which had been pushed back for centuries, came roaring back. Banyan trees, they're also known as strangler figs, they dropped their seeds onto the stone temples, and they sent down these roots like giant tentacles that just slowly, patiently wrapped themselves around and crushed this magnificent city.
You know, the story of Angkor is so much more than just ancient history. It's a really profound warning. We like to think that our own complex systems, our power grids, our water supplies, our internet, that they're permanent. But Angkor is a stark reminder of how a society that seems completely invincible can be brought to its knees by a mix of its own internal problems and a sudden environmental shock it just wasn't ready for. And it forces us to ask a pretty chilling question about our own world, doesn't it?